We're also joined by the Honourable Nkosikazi Nobongo Konyama, who will be from the House of Traditional Leaders. We're also joined by Professor Luka Mosoma from the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Rights, Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities. We're also joined by Dr. Mike Semelan from the Department of Basic Education. We're also joined by Mr. Boichoko Moremi, who is a Senior Provincial Manager at the PEN South African Language Board. Mr. David Letwalo, academic, is also joining us today. And I'll be assisted by Ms. Masibi from the PPSA office, who will be assisting myself. And the last speaker would be the Deputy Public Protector, being Advocate Collega Kgalema, who will be giving us a summary of the discussions and the way forward. I wish to take this opportunity to just dwell a bit on the panel members, and all of them have got a wide range of experience in terms of the issues that we'll be discussing for the day. Advocate Mkhwebane is the 4th Public Protector of South Africa, who was appointed in October 2016. Definitely, she has got a wide range of experience in issues of investigation, governance, as well as the public sector. She's currently the first Vice President of the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, which is called in short IOMA, which is a continental body of the public protectors-like institution in Africa. She's also the board chairperson of the African Ombudsman Research Center, which is assisting IOMA with research, information, capacity building, and advocacy. And in December 2018, Advocate Mkhwebane was elected as the president of IOMA during the Association's 6th General Assembly Conference in Kigali, Rwanda. Advocate Collega Kgalema, who is currently occupying the position of the Deputy Public Protector, was appointed at the end of January 2020 by the Honourable President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa. Her appointment really came as a backdrop of a recommendation by the National Assembly, which followed a thorough process and a transparent process of appointment of the Deputy Protector, which was comprised of a multi-party parliamentary committee. She holds an LLB degree obtained from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and nearing a completion of a master's degree in commercial law with a leading university in South Africa. And she brings with her wealth experience in terms of the legal practice, the law, prosecution, investigations, etc. And she will also be participating in this webinar today. Mr. David Letwalo is also joining here, Sankarist, activist, highly experienced senior law academic at the University of South Africa, with interest in various disciplines, including legal education, language, and the law, in particular constitutional law. He has formidable experience in language education, the African dispute resolution mechanisms. He has headed the UNISA's Institute for Dispute Resolution, a very important institution in the country dealing with dispute resolution in Africa. He has also interacted and quite extensive experience in dealing with traditional authorities and royal councils on matters ranging from rural development, African traditional courts, rules, culture, and heritage. Presently, Mr. Letwalo is attached to the newly established Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA, being the University of South Africa. Ms. Florence Masebe, an actor, author, activist, Africa Mover Kgalema Award, South African Film and Award winner. I think most of us are quite familiar with her talent. She's also the Director of Special Projects in the Office of the Deputy Minister of Higher Education at the moment, Science and Innovation, and she's also the founder of Nyamutenga Heritage Foundation. She will be sharing with us her experience and insights into this very important discussion today. Dr. Moses Semelan, currently attached to the Department of Basic Education, a scholar, an educator of more than 13 years. And Dr. Semelan has held various senior positions within the public sector. He was definitely the Deputy Chief Education Specialist responsible for EMIS, the regional office in KwaZulu-Natal Province, Department of Education, for quite a number of years. He was then appointed the JET Education Services Project Manager at the National Department in Research, Monitoring and Evaluation. And from August 2006, he returned to the National Department of Education, where he was appointed a Chief Education Specialist in Research and Evaluation. At the moment, he is currently the Chief Director in the Department of Basic Education, responsible for curriculum implementation. Honourable Inkosikazi Nobongo Konyama, quite very impressive profile of the Honourable Konyama. At the moment, she's serving in various governance structures, being the Audit and Risk Committee, also being a board member and non-executive director at the South African Post Office. She has also served as the chairperson of the Human Resources and Remuneration Committee in that area. She also serves as a committee member in the Audit and Risk Committee in that institution, being the South African Post Office. She's also a member of the South African Women's Lawyers Association. Her legal skills, coupled with knowledge and participation and being part of the daily lives of our people on the ground, being a regent, senior traditional leader at Kakadu Traditional Authority, at Mpuzana Great Palace of the Dlao Royal House, Omadiba, Sompicho, Odlomo, or King Sabata Talinjabu Municipality in Tata, where she is also an admitted attorney, having practiced law and director of the NP Konyama and Associate Attorneys. She's a member of the National House of Traditional Leaders, and she serves as the chairperson of the Justice and Crime Prevention Security Committee. Honourable Konyama, we also welcome you to participate in this session today. Mr. Boykocho Moremi is also a participant, a panelist today. He has various qualifications, including sports management and recreation diploma from the Potchefstroom University, where he acquired his education. He's also completed his B.Ed honors at Potchefstroom University, a former educator with a lot of experience in terms of educational background and activism and community involvement in the areas that he has operated in. He has also contributed a lot in the Northern Cape Arts and Culture Council, where he was assisting the government in that province to implement the strategies in terms of issues of culture in the Northern Cape, as well as in the committee that's dealing with the provincial language in that province. The contribution also spans to the Northern Cape Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, as well as the National Arts Council. The last esteemed panelist we have is Professor Luka Musoma, who will also be sharing with us his views on this very important subject today. Former Deputy Vice Chancellor and Vice Principal Learner Support and Student Affairs at UNISA, former Chairperson of TIDA, Chairperson of Bonacom Investment Committee, and currently the Chairperson of the Commission for and Promotion of the Protection and Rights of Cultural and Religious and Linguistic Communities, being the CRL Rights Commission. These are our esteemed panelists who will be joining us today. I hope we're going to have an eventful day today. I wish to now take this opportunity to give an opportunity to Advocate Bosiso Mkwabane, the Public Protector South Africa, to give us a keynote address. Over to you, Advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, for the introductions and the opening. I would like to also thank all the panelists and everyone who is streaming live to this engagement. I'd like to acknowledge the chairperson of CRL, the Deputy Public Protector, the Honourable Konyama, Konyama from the National House of Traditional Leaders, Dr. Semelan, Mr. David Elizondo from UNISA, and Mr. Muremi from PENSAP, and all the members of who've joined us, and not forgetting our also very important panelist, Ms. Florence Masebe. At the outset, I wish to thank each who's taking part in this dialogue and part of our commemoration of this important month, the Heritage Month. As we all are aware, it was all color and splendor this Thursday when the country was celebrating the Heritage Day. And it means we are conscientized about this day, and we will always have to remember our origins, our customs, our culture, and our traditions. And interestingly, this the Shaga Day, and I think we will also have to keep that alive so that we do not forget our history. Sisebenzisa amalimu wangaphandle kwazi ukuthi sizwa. So I think it's in English, but then I think it will be can communicate in all the languages so that we can be able to coexist and to understand each other's customs and traditions. And I think for us to continuously use English, there is a risk of total extinction of our languages. And I think we wouldn't want to see that happening to our generation. So we must remain true to our roots, for without our heritage, we will be a people without identity. Part of our identity as a people is our language. And as our late former President Nelson Mandela indicated, that when you speak to the person in a language other than their own, the message goes to their head, but only when you converse with that person in the language of, in their mother tongue, then you are speaking to their heart. And that will then go to what we are intending to achieve with this webinar. Through this webinar, we seek to explore the independent role that each of us or independent institutions like the Public Protector, CRL, and others should play on issues affecting the use of vernacular language where matters of good governance are concerned. We ask this question within the context of the institution's constitutional mandate, in terms of which the office is empowered to investigate, report on, and remedy any alleged or suspected improper or prejudicial conduct in state affairs or in public administration and any sphere of government. These include the office additional powers, which is prescribed by the national legislation, the Public Protector Act, which has the power to root out maladministration, which we know that where there's maladministration, it is a fertile ground for corruption. Section 6.1 of the Constitution recognizes as official the 11 official languages that a program facilitator is already referred to, and subsection 2 provides that recognizing the historically diminished use and status of indigenous languages of our people, the state must take practical and positive measures to elevate the matters. In subsection 5 of the Constitution, which provides for the establishment of PENSAP through national legislation and goes further, exercising this right may do so in a manner inconsistent with any provision of the Bill of Rights. So in this particular instance, the question is, are we as a country having that choice to use our rights and to exercise our rights in our engagements with various state institutions? Ladies and gentlemen, on the 2nd of May 2013, the Use of Official Languages Act was promulgated, and it was giving effect to Section 6 of the Constitution, which I have just referred to above. And the object of this law are to regulate and monitor the use of the official languages for government purposes by national government, to promote parity of esteem and equitable treatment of official languages of the Republic, to facilitate equitable access to services and information of national government, and to promote good language management by national government, to efficient public service administration, and to meet the needs of the public. This piece of legislation is applicable to national departments, national public entities, and national public enterprises. Importantly, it takes precedence over any inconsistent provision of any other law on the use of official languages by national government. This law made it compulsory for every national department, national public entity, national public enterprise to adopt a language policy regarding the use of official languages for government purposes within 18 months of the promulgation of this act, and that is falling within the Ministry of Arts and Culture. And any language policy adopted under this law must comply with the provisions of Section 6.3a of the Constitution, which is identify at least 3 languages that national departments, national public entities, and national public enterprises will use for government purposes, and stipulate how official languages will be used, among other things, in effectively communicating with the public on official notices, government publications, and as well as intra-government communications. What is clear is that we have a very good legal framework as a country when it comes to the government's use of a language for government purposes. And yet, when PENSAP came out strongly last year in a document titled the Comprehensive Report on the Use of Official Languages Act of 2012, that there was poor compliance with this act. Fortunately, we have in our midst a colleague from PENSAP, Mr. Muremi, who will shed light more on this aspect. But I, for one, was not surprised at the comments of PENSAP report. Oftentimes, we are going about in various provinces as the public protector, where we are compelled by legislation, the Constitution, to be accessible. And when we engage with members of the public, we find that there's serious challenges where the public is prejudiced by how they are being provided the services of government and as a recipient of public services. For instance, we traveled to Northern Cape last year during the same period of Heritage Month, where we've met with the marginalized communities of such as the Khoi, the San, the Shun, and the Kwe. They have also been, they've raised sharply their concerns and the challenges which they are facing. We do have research documents also where internally we've seen that there is a challenge that those languages might be extinct because there's only very few members of the community who understand the language, which apparently has up to 112 clicks. So we've also visited the University of the Northwest in Potchefstroom, where we received a complaint about the usage of Afrikaans, and that complaint is investigated by our office in the Northwest. I am aware of the seemingly brewing tension which has been raised in the past, where there is a university that is built in Gauteng, where Afrikaans will be the medium of instruction. So those are the issues which we will need to elaborate on. But again, interestingly, what is our Department of Education doing as the custodian of the policy? And they are the ones who should be creating an enabling environment for us to operate. I think I've mentioned several times as well that there are still schools which make it compulsory for students to pass Afrikaans and English, and they won't be promoted to the next grade. Do we still need to have that? Why can't we create an environment where all the languages in each region, where the language is dominating, that everyone is expected to be knowing that particular language? We know now in the Eastern Cape, which is a very progressive move by the Eastern Cape, where they are grade 12 will be writing the matric examinations in their mother tongue. Just as I've learned, which was reported, they've got plans as well to amend the constitution so as to add the sign language, which is a progressive step. But I think we also need to check the other languages. Are they receiving the support, and what is being proactively done to make sure that all these languages are addressed? You visit SASA office, you find that all the pamphlets are in English, but you'd find that there are those who can't even read English or even Afrikaans, but they can read isiZulu or isiXhosa and Venda. So I think that's what we should be focusing on. As an institution, the issue of language is one of the pillars of Vision 2023. When we speak about access, we are not only referring to the infrastructure or the footprint or the offices, but we're also speaking about whether people can be able to understand the work of the public protector, but as well, what are they supposed to receive or the services they are supposed to receive from various government departments or public administration, and where we are also building the public protectors of the future. Most importantly, we must identify the role that the office must play in taking the matter forward in the interest of quality public service delivery and the entrenchment of good governance in state affairs. Thank you, Program Director, for giving me the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the constructive deliberations in this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mkhwebane. Before Nlibala, Advocate Mkhwebane, ungakhona ukuzisho, Advocate?
I should have also started ngalokho lochani namdlangwe umkerezana mvalo. Yes, I think that will be sufficient for now.
Siyabonga Advocate Mkhwebane. We will now, and thank you for the address that we've made, Advocate, raising pertinent issues on issues around language in the country, and what are the risks that are being faced by languages which are at risk of extinction. I would now take this opportunity just to allow the participants before they can make a brief, their brief introductory comments. Ms. Masebe?
Nenga dzina ndipfi Nyamutenga khadzi ya Masebe umakovagada mutuchera sichalongeni. Ndi mwana wa Masingo na vafamadi va mashawanya mambeule wanogonya thavanga vakololo vatsanga mukana mwana varadza nduma ndi agalela murafi wanochira shavi. If I carried on, you might need to end up coming up with a goat or a bull.
Yes.
So my issue on languages is one of passion, public protector, because when I look at languages, they shape who we are. They're a big part of our identity. I can't come through and tell you who I am without leaning back on my mother tongue to understand my value, to understand my identity. Now, for that to carry on, we've got to remember that our world changes on a daily basis. In my line of work, I always say to people, where we used to have the fireside, where Ugogo would tell children stories at night, we now have a box in our living room. And our children have tablets in their hands. We have mass media replacing Gogo and the fireside. What we need to look at very carefully is in the regulated broadcasting space, what are we doing to develop and preserve and protect indigenous languages? I prefer for us to always, excuse me, say indigenous languages instead of vernacular, because the scientific definition for vernacular in its essence says that they are inferior to the colonial masters' languages, and they are not. So for as long as they're still vernac, we won't develop them to their full technical and technological potential. And we need to do those things. So if a child is born today in South Africa, the first early childhood development content that they are going to see in their lounge is either from Disney or the BBC. It is American programming or English programming. Our very own SABC, if you go and ask, I'm actually a little disappointed that they're not here because they have a lot to answer when it comes to language services for people. SABC and ICASA. So SABC and ICASA will fall back and say language use and quotas are being fed. Because what you hear is language use is actually them telling you that if they broadcast a soccer game for 90 minutes, that means they gave you content in an indigenous language. That's just a soccer game. So if a child cannot listen to folk songs and stories often on the one thing that sits in their home and influences how they speak, they are never going to play catch up. Our children have either British or American accents before they've even gone to preschool, because we are copying everything and forgetting to create what belongs to us. So the children's department at SABC is a very important one that over the years finds itself being neglected. When I was very young, I think fresh out of university or still at university, I did a lot of children's programming. We did a program on television called Look and Say, which was in Sesotho and English. And it was literally the alphabet and teaching little ones the alphabet, but with a reference to Sesotho. We don't have such. So you are finding yourselves as South Africa wanting to deal with the lack of language use at a higher space, forgetting that at the very basic, we are expecting our children to be fluent in English while they are 2 years old. Abagwazi ukuthi molo mama. Ga ba itse gore nkgono ke kopa metsi a kgomo. And it is because they're being taught by Barney. They're being taught by Mickey Mouse. They're being taught by a Takarani Sesame that is always mistranslated with people speaking in their languages there, but a broken version of those languages, because we are not being strict with how these languages are represented. So the content creation side in broadcast services really needs to take Indigenous languages seriously. And if we don't start it with children, it means because as little ones, they didn't absorb content created in their mother tongue. They won't want to absorb that content as they grow up because they'll find it detached and boring for them. So you won't find teenagers that want broadcasting in their mother tongue because Yo TV taught them that to be cool, you've got to be the kid that speaks with an accent. More and more, we are reaching a space where we erode the importance of languages instead of making it better. The fact that it took so many years post-democracy for SABC 1 to say, we have a drama in isiNdebele, 13 episodes and it's gone. So amaNdebele must go back and pray again that somebody will feel sorry for them and give them one more program. The fact that we had to celebrate Giyani coming on SABC 2, but Tsonga at last could see themselves and hear themselves on national television. And then boom, it's finished. Sorry, it wasn't a permanent thing. Did you think you were going to be here forever? Wait your turn again for another 15 years. The fact that 4 languages, Tshivenda, Xitsonga, Siswati, isiNdebele, have to rotate for a turn to have a news bulletin on television every week. So it means that if I don't speak English and anybody else's language, I have no right to a news bulletin on television more than 3 days a week, or sometimes only 2 days a week, depending on what the rotation gives me that week. Because Akiri, Venda, Tsonga, Swati, and Ndebeles don't need news on the weekend because we only gave them time during the week and at a time when they are still in taxis commuting home. So the fact that we haven't made spaces to fully give languages their turn and their platform to thrive means we're not really serious about not having very important Indigenous languages going into extinction. They will do so because in creating content and the soft side of broadcasting is the one that is most influential. The side where we create things, it's not really news, it's us just being. If lifestyle is presented in languages that don't speak to you, we are saying your language can never be top billing class. If entertainment is presented only in 3 languages and nothing more, we are saying other languages do not qualify. I'm still waiting to see when they'll feel sad and guilty enough to create a Siswati program on television, a full drama in Siswati, not one where you punctuate in it by hiring one actor who speaks the language, but one where you see full, Emaswati being themselves in a drama. We can't still be looking for these things 25 years beyond democracy. It is just wrong that we have not stopped to say, yeah, fight. I get a sense that Indigenous languages will always bear the brunt of whatever is going on at the SABC at whatever point in life. And I've been around long enough to know that there's always something going on at the SABC. But because we're busy focusing on sports rights and news only also, we have forgotten that this very important side of content creation is where Indigenous languages must be alive. We loved Joe Mafera because he showed up in so many different ways, speaking different Indigenous languages. When he was a Mosotho, you believed he was a Mosotho. When he was Zulu, in fact, when he died and we said he was a Movenda, people said we lied. Gloria Mudau was the same. Because we love good is nice little day. because it was about us. It spoke our languages. We loved Lillian Dube in Mopeme because in Sotho Saniti, but not just the language, the culture, the heritage that gets embedded in that. So we need to go back and say how from ECD level, from the children's department to the education department to news and actuality and everything else that we do in public broadcasting. How are we representing Indigenous languages? We are not doing what is right with Indigenous languages, even in the spaces where we can, and the public broadcasting space should be the first one, but we've completely forgotten all about it, and we need to go back. Ngiyabonga.
Sawonga kakhulu Ms. Masebe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that great introduction and remarks that you've made. Honourable Konyama, ngiyathi ukuthi ukushilo kancane nje earlier before we joined. Two things, uzicho futhi, and then give us your introductory remarks regarding this discussion for the day.
Enkosi Program Director, luthethayo nguNozulu, uMakheswa Mpafana uthukela umchumane, uNozulu liyasibekela nomthathamba kweliphezulu. Libetha umuntu lingabekwa tyala kuthiwa bekudlala inkosazana. Inkosikazi yoDlomo leno sophitsho ngqolo lomsilo yemi ovela bembhentsela. Jonga uba ndingaqhabala kapha inene ngakhona abafuna uzojoyina babe ngamaXhosa bonke. Mandiniyeke apho. Thank you so much, Program Director. I think you know your way of us introducing ourselves. It's exciting. We will get to know each other now. Our real us, our identity is gonna be revealed today. Program Director, the Public Protector, the Deputy Public Protector, the distinguished participants, I greet you all in the name of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I want to start by reading a quote known as the Dakota tribal wisdom. The Dakota Indian passed from generation to generation, and it reads as follows. I've read this during the opening of the House in Parliament. I'm doing this for the second time. It fascinates me. It makes me to think, and it has enhanced my thinking capacity on how we have lost our identity and having forsaken all the ways we have grown up to be and the road where we are leading to. It reads as follows. When you discover that you are riding a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. However, in the modern business, education, and government, a range of far more advanced strategies are often employed. I'm not going to read all of this. It's a bit long. But, oh, sorry, no, this is not the one. Sorry, this is not the one. The one that the one that I wanted to read is the one that was written by Lord Charles, talking about us forsaking our culture, us having forgotten where we come from, and the manner in which the strategy that they adopted for them to destroy our being. And if we can to save the time, maybe as the time goes on, maybe before I finish, I will be able to get this information. I'm sorry. The reason why I'm quoting this is to show how important it is to embrace our identity, which to me is the vernacular, the language that we speak as different people in South Africa. We cannot turn a blind eye on the fact that the vernacular languages have been swallowed by the use of English in the name of it being termed or known as universal language. It is such a pity that here in my country, which is so much beautiful and having a constitution that is so well applauded, we seem to be avoiding, if not evading, some of the parts of the constitution, but we are literally not adhering and ignorant of them. I will zoom straight to section 15, subsection 1, paying particular attention to thought and belief. I'm not going to read the entire section, hence I'm zooming straight to the thought and the belief. We believe that we are Africans. We don't even think about that. We know it. And we believe that in us engaging and using our language should have been considered and taken into consideration, but we are failing on that. Zooming straight again to section 30 of the Constitution, it talks about the language and the culture. I'm not going to talk about the culture, but I'm just going to talk about the language. And we are failing as the country dismally to embrace our languages, especially us as Africans. And even our children, bekhula in our environment, we make it a point that when we converse with them, let us use the foreign language. It's a pity, and to me, it means that we are not confident enough to know who we are and to teach our children who they are. You will not be surprised to meet a child, that is the child's clan name, and you find that child is literally blank. He or she does not know ukubungumabani. I think it's high time during this Heritage Month that we go back to our roots, so that we embrace and we teach our children to know and be proud of who they are and to embrace their identity. I want all of us to agree that in some instances, the understanding and the name of something in vernacular language is totally different from the English word that is known to most people. I will make an example. There's a word called uncle. Uncle in English talks about two people. That is utatomncinci nomalume. Those are totally two different people in our understanding and in our culture. Tatomncinci is the brother to my father, and uncle and umalume is a brother to my mother. But in English, it embraces all. Kuthiwa uncle. Now you'll find when we talk about this uncle, let's make an example. I'll meet my uncle, and when you meet your uncle, it has to be known in our culture that you are meeting either tatomncinci or malume. So the challenges that are coming up with us embracing other languages is confusing to most people, especially our children, that we are not teaching well how to embrace and to differentiate between these names. Abantwana yonke into kubo ngu-uncle, and again we fail Tina as parents to tell them that this is what happened. This uncle is umalume, this uncle is utatomncinci, and forget about embracing this name. Rather focus usebenzise the name that you know and that is generally used in each sphere. Because hence I'm mentioning utatomncinci nomalume. In other cultures, they might be using different names, which I want to believe that those two people that I've just mentioned, they've got different names. Even in respect of other cultures, they don't use the one word called uncle. I want to also touch on the issue of the languages that are used. PP has mentioned the challenges that as the country we are faced with. I'm speaking on behalf of the most vulnerable, abantu basezilalini, the people that we are leading in rural communities. Citing just one example, the court processes. that's where you see the importance of the usage of our vernacular language in the court proceedings. There's an African magistrate sitting on the bench. The prosecutor is an African person. The accused is an African person. The complainant is an African person. All these four people that I've mentioned are speaking one language. Masithi ngamaXhosa, the court is emthatha. You ask yourself, why will the court proceedings be conducted in English? I'm referring to bethetha one language. Let me make another example. We have been taught to embrace, in embracing our language, to respect some words. And you'll find in Durban the very same word that we are respecting, it's well known throughout that particular community. The word that is used in that particular community is well known. I will try to be respectful and not be and avoid some use of names. But the point that I'm trying to drive home is in a case where the child, I'm making an example, the case of a rape of an elderly woman. They've been taught, that's our upbringing, which is so deep-rooted culturally on the use of names, that your private part, there's a particular name that you mention as a private part. And in court, it will be so difficult for her to mention it as is. The prosecutor will be poking this old lady, what happened, and most of them, they avoid going to courts because they are running away from from putting these nasty, to them it feels like nasty, these nasty words in the public domain. It's a sign to them that they are not, I mean, they feel like it's belittling them. Hence, you'll find in most cases, people, rather than facing, rather than going to courts so that justice is done on their behalf, if in embracing our culture in terms of this book constitution, we were going to ensure as the country that the use of language is going to be used in each and every sphere of our country, things would not be the way they are now. You'll ask yourself, China, another example, China is progressing right before our eyes. You will ask yourself why China is so progressive. They are using their own language in everything they are doing. Be it whether you have gone to school, whether you are educated or not, but you are using your own language. And hence now the understanding, thanks to the public protector who has mentioned, because I've written about this, that Eastern Cape, we are progressive. We are born amaXhosa wona no buyaphi ke bantu akuthi masiwavumeni beke kwathiwa i-12 country andifuna ukungena kakhulu kule into. Kodwa ke the Eastern Cape has started now with introduction of writing exams in our own African languages. The people who are complaining about the introduction of English, exams written in vernacular language, are the people, are our own brothers and sisters. More than anyone else, you ask yourself, where are we going to as the country? Why are we so blinded to the fact that instead of us embracing the introduction of writing the exams in our own languages, we still want to embrace this, the foreign language? There's a wake-up call, a very strong wake-up call that we should embark on as the country to say, Vuka mntu omnyama, whether you are writing it in your own Tsonga, Shivenda, Siswati, but this time around, we should have even a drive of saying, Vuka mntu omnyama, embrace your language, embrace your identity. academic institutions are also progressive in terms of identifying and embracing our own things. I will make mention of the doctorates that are being honored, that are being our people are being honored with. Umama Dosini, a lady who is a very old lady who is singing indigenous music. She has been honored by Rhodes University with a doctorate, to show in Dogobana where some people as Tina, we are busy stamping down our own identity. The people are embracing those languages. I will mention, I will not forget Umama Hlangu, the painter, and I think we all know her. In Dogobana, the international companies have embraced her and they are recognizing her. Her name is so lifted high to an extent that as South Africans, we are so proud of her. She's our beacon of hope, and we held her in such high esteem because of what she's doing. She was not recognized by our own. It is the foreign countries that recognized her. Why are we always going to be following people that are doing things for ourselves? I will make another mention as we are talking about vernacular in particular, the examples that I'm citing. If you go to the Sothos, their brand is a blanket, ingubo Sotho. Louis Vuitton has stolen that. So coming to this issue now, without of embracing our vernacular as the society, as the nation. Social language or storytelling. I know, at least I know in English, but it's even worse. I mean, it's disgraceful. Let us agree to disagree. For me to know that Intsomi is a storytelling in English, but I don't know in other African languages what it means. So it means in Dogobana, we are not embracing other African languages. Strangely enough, you meet a white person talking somebody else's language. We all clap hands. You see, he can talk the language. That's how as the society, we are so twisted to embrace the other person who is talking English more than us. Another disgracing aspect that we should take into consideration and rebuke each other when we do that. The third is engaged. Teacher, there was a word that was used to be said by my teacher, Ati, do you follow so far, you people? I never knew that thing up until I passed grade 12. So would say yes. And then you'd ask and make a follow-up question, and we don't know. Ati, I asked you, do you follow? We didn't understand what she was saying, but would say yes. And if that which the teacher was teaching us in our own vernacular and in our own language that we know, we would know exactly. Like I said, niyalandela na abafundi. Xa singalandeli, we would say no, asilandeli. Because we were talking in a foreign language, we would say yes. The consequences of that would be the beating. Now I'm making a call to the Department of Recreation, Arts and Culture. It's supposed to ensure that we embrace our culture. It must take the space and cement the space of ensuring that each and every language in South Africa is each and every culture is embraced as the Constitution dictates. So, Department of Arts and Culture said, "Pity next time when we engage into this kind of a dialogue, all the role players, so that they can take notes. Let us pray that they are listening, especially that the program is streamlined. Of ensuring that the languages are protected the languages are not only protected, but they are also practiced. Ziyasetyenziswa everywhere. Apho kunideka khona uba zisetyenziswe. On that note, program director and participants of this dialogue, when I was writing my notes, ndabhala phezulu into ethi vuka ntomnyama, vuka Africa. So it was a call of saying, wake up African woman, wake up African man, wake up African nation, embrace your language because this is our identity. It's a pity, in conclusion, when you look, Ms. Masebe has mentioned even the TV programs, you would watch as Africans, you have never seen an event that is live streamed for the whole day in a TV program by channels zethu. Kodwa makuthiwe kuchata umuntu wasengilani, the entire TV programs kuzawuvezwa le mitshato. Why are we so whether you are in Africa but your mind must be in England? That is a challenge, that is an indictment. Kodwa, in as far as the language is concerned, especially the courts, my cry goes to the courts, please let something be done in terms of using the language that people understand. Because complainant no accused to ekhona ethetha isiXhosa kodwa kube kusithiwa as it pleases this court wathini yonke lonto. We have to come to a point of saying uyamazi lo muntu ukwenze ntoni, umanti naye eze kum athethe language endizayi-understanda. Sizawuyibona inkululeko esizawuba nayo nenkqubela phambili singabantu. For those who did not understand what I was saying, uxolo urhulumente uzawungenelela afundise each and every citizen yeli lizwe the basic Sotho, the basic Tswana, the basic Sivenda. I was listening to Ms. Masebe ethetha apha ndaqomba anzamrhalele etsho kamandi, and I don't know what she was saying, and to me that's a disgrace. Imbi ibuhlungu naye ngoku xa ndizawuthi iqaqa laziqika kuqaqaqa laxa uqhoqhoqho uzawuqonda into yobana yeyi hayi ke ngoku this is PhD level Xhosa, and yet these are things that we should know. So let us embrace our languages. Let us ensure that especially our children, they are the lost generation. We can agree to disagree, but they are the lost generation. Vuka mntomnyama, vuka Africa. Thank you, Program Director.
Ndabulela great Honourable Konyama. What an insightful introduction. Simnandi isiXhosa. Simnandi isiXhosa. Prof Masoma, do you want to make your, I invite you now to make your 5 minutes introductory remarks on the subject. Thank you. Hi, Prof. Masoma, we seem not to hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Did you hear my introductory first statement? No?
No, Prof.
Okay, ke musuma e bodile a tswako. Ke mokoni wa ntšhitše tšhweu. Ke tlhapa ka lebese, ka tlhapa ka metsi ke a paologa. Thank you so much. Ke batla go leboga the public protector, goba a memile goba o mongwe wa diboledi tšatšing la mamotla. This is a very important engagement. And of course, we are fostering partnership and cooperation, which is expected of the Chapter 9 institutions. The question being asked for me to look at, what can one do, what can the Commission do to foster mutual respect amongst cultural, religious, and linguistic communities? As a Chapter 9 institution, we have just completed an engagement, public hearing, at which we invited all the organs of state, departments, SAPS, justice, education, you name them, to give an account about the implementation of the policy which gives effect to equity of esteem and practical use of indigenous African languages. Unfortunately, we're taken over by the lockdown, and our report will be ready as soon as everything gets in the same, gets completed. We have realized that the real challenge is not in our stars. The real challenge is in us. Who is in charge? We can talk until cows come home. We are to blame because we have to play a role and to bring our languages at the center of public use, whether in business or in public setup. I taught at the University of South Africa at a time when African languages had a department or a faculty in which all our languages were taught. As soon as we had democracy in 1994, the department, all of them, died, which signified that the African languages since then had no future. But to the point, what is mutual respect? I think that's where we must start. What is mutual respect? Or reciprocal respect? Mutual respect is about accepting another community's beliefs, values, heritages, ways of life, because in doing so, you accord the other community a space as yourself. And this is one way of creating a community, a cohesive community, a community of learning, where each citizen learn to appreciate, learn to accept, learn to accommodate and embrace the other. And this happens because communities are socialized as such. But the challenge, however, is that once that is happening, at the center of using these languages, which is in our department, governments, public spaces, these languages are not used, not because they are not accommodated in the Constitution. The Constitution speaks about them, that they must be given equity of esteem and equity of practical use. But on the day-to-day level, these are not used. Now, as CRL, what do we do? First is to ensure that communities are conscientized that language is a good, that each one of them is has been bequeathed from generation to generation, that language, religion, and culture these are important to each and every community. And therefore, it is incumbent upon each and every community to understand what these languages are for. And the purpose is not to create a separate development as apartheid used to do, is to understand that language, culture, and religion are a means, not an end, which implies it's a means to building a cohesive nation together. That these languages have a contribution, but what needs to happen is to afford them the equal space, which has to be done in terms of the act and policies that each and every department is seized with. So our analysis and the outcome of our hearings will give effect to indicate that the real problem lies at the level of policy implementation. That's where the challenges lies. We as a CRL are working on programs to ensure first and foremost that we have CRL chapters in schools and institutions of higher learning, because that's where language is seized at the initial stages. Appreciation of both language, culture, and religion start at the point of offering education. I know that the student organizations have come to us, we have had conversations where they are talking about the fact that African languages are not given space to become languages of research, languages of knowledge production, languages of commerce, languages of trade. If these languages are not given space in the marketplace of languages, culture, and religion, they will not be able to survive. So it's incumbent upon us not only to talk about mutual respect, to talk about mutual use and the fact that they must be given equitable esteem. We do that by organizing linguistic events, dialogues, seminars. We have concluded several multilingualism debates in which South Africans participated to ensure how we can use the multiplicity of our languages to enrich South Africa. And we are creating space for inclusive children's participation and youth of different backgrounds and ethnic beliefs to make sure that they participate in this. We encourage that indigenous languages be languages of commerce, languages that are taught in public schools as well as in independent schools. We also encourage that we need to harness the use of different media platforms to promote mutual respect among diverse communities. But it is important, Program Director, to understand that this mutual respect can be reinforced by the idea of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, which accepts the fact that we belong, all of us. And because we belong and we have a common good, and the common good is the end to which we want to achieve this one very important community, that we must foster different alternative ways of ensuring that when we have disputes, we use that as what we call alternative dispute resolutions in our own languages, inculcate those cultural methods which our forebears used in order to give effect to the languages and the studying of languages in our environment. But we also understand that we are not able to achieve this. We can talk about them because we are dominated. The economic domination, which is in fact what dictates what happens, whether SABC, whether in our different settings, we are economically dominated. We can talk the way we want to talk, but if you can transform society, transform the ownership, the control and management of the economy, and we remain on the margin, we can talk about all of these things that will tend to nothing. Yes, as CRL, we are continuing the mandate of ensuring that we promote and protect the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities to develop friendship, to develop peace, to develop tolerance. But all of these, to what end? If we can't open communities in such a way that they have common participation and give effect to common equality. So with this, my view is that we have an important cultural and religious ethical principle, Ubuntu. Where have we lost this? Because if we can't use Ubuntu and engender a cultural revolution, a linguistic revolution, to give effect to our values, our cultures, and our languages, I don't think these languages we seek to protect will continue to benefit, because they'll continue to be marginalized, to be backward, irrespective of what we feel about them. We are a democratic country. We must decide what to do. We have the power. We're not borrowing power from anybody. We have our members of parliament who must decide what this nation must do in using its languages. Of course, the first starting point is the Constitution. What do we do? I want to invite everybody to enter what I call, or I want to appeal to all South Africans to draw from our own values and participate daily in the Ubuntu revolution, where each citizen wears a badge of Ubuntu as a mark and expression of mutual respect, tolerance, and affirmation of our rich cultural, religious, and linguistic diversity. Thank you. Thank you, Program.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for this brilliant introduction. I wish to acknowledge all our social media networks, Twitter, and in particular YouTube, and all our invitees on our YouTube channel. I saw that we've got a number of invitees. I've noted Ms. Tobo Mkwanazi Kaluva, who is with us today. I've also noted Mr. Humphrey Mohashwa, who made a couple of comments. Ms. Bridget Masilela, thank you for joining us. All others who are listening in, watch this webinar today. Dr. Semelan, ungazi isho mnumzane, and give us your 5 minutes introductory remarks on this subject. Thank you very much. Dr. Semelan, you can please come in.
Hello, thank you, Program Director. Hello, good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Doc. You can proceed.
Oh, thank you very much, Program Director. Mhlambe angiqale ngokuzisa ukuthi abawasimelane abompembe labawuthayo ondletshana zimqhwala ondlovezile ekhaya ngokusela phezulu. Thina-ke siye sithi singaboMatalankosi yasemhlolo. Ngizohamba ngiphelele lapho. I don't know if ngiyezwakala now.
Awuyezwakala baba, ungaqhubeka.
Okay, ngiyabonga kakhulu. Let me also, on behalf of the Department of Basic Education, take this opportunity to appreciate the space that we've been offered in this dialogue about languages. Firstly, let me start by talking about what I make of a language. For me, a language is a vehicle of culture. A language contributes to shaping one's identity and dignity, maybe even including self-respect as well. But coming to the bit and the framework that we're given to talk to make our inputs from the department's perspective, I would like to start by outlining some of the challenges that we have experienced with regard to language or around the utilization of language in education. I think most of the languages, most of the challenges we have experienced are compounded by the fact that our indigenous African languages have suffered neglect and they have been sidelined in many respects. This has therefore led to the following challenges, or has led to the following manifestation of that neglect of African language. For instance, our languages are underdeveloped and under-resourced. That has led to the hegemony of English and Afrikaans as dominant languages in terms of teaching and learning services. We have also come to realize that the majority of our teachers are unable, especially at the foundation phase, that is from grade R to grade 3, where learners are expected to teach using the home language, the dominant home language of the learners at the school, or at least in the classroom. We have come to realize that, for instance, our teachers are able to teach our learners how to read and read effectively in African languages. Our teachers are also able to teach other subjects in African languages, because our African languages have remained underdeveloped, and therefore when it comes to unpacking concepts in other subjects, our teachers are found wanting. That is why we find an unstructured and unguided code switching between English and African language. And I guess this is This derives from the fact that when teachers are at university and when they are specializing in an African language, for instance, at university, to teach in an African language, we will find that in the past, I'm not sure, but I still think it's still the practice, even in this day and age, where teachers would be taught in English in terms of how to teach, to prepare them to teach an African language whenever they graduate to become teachers. So therefore, there will be an issue of translation from English methodology to use them in teaching an African language, as an example. And that has caused a lot of frustration, especially with our learners, and has impacted how our learners are performing across a range of subjects. Also, in heterogeneous communities, whether you look at it from a township perspective or schools in urban areas, we know that our South African Schools Act has given school governing bodies the powers to determine the language for learning and teaching at the school. And what has happened is that our school governing bodies do not use uniform criteria or guidelines to make that determination in terms of which language of learning and teaching is going to be used at the school. We have seen in recent years, immediately after the dawn of democracy, that a number of Black African learners, for instance, have migrated to urban schools to former model schools.
Dr. Semelan.
Hello?
Dr. Semelan. Yes, Doc, we seem to have a challenge with the network from your side. I'm not sure if it's from our side.
Yes.
Yeah, can I ask you to reconnect so that we can hear you clearly?
Okay, let me reconnect quickly.
Thank you so much. And in the meantime, we will just proceed to the next speaker, panelist, Ndate Morin. Mr. Machoko.
Okay. Dumelang bagaetsho. Nna, hello. Nna,
Ndate.
dumelang bagaetsho. Nna ke morolong wa Kgopa o Maseng. Ke mmina tholo namane eto na tshesebe. Re dukuluga solo. Re lahla Maseng. Our totem, in simple terms, it's referring to the power of the kudu animal when it is increasing its breed inside the kraal. I'm bringing to this webinar the greetings from the board of the Pan South African Language Board, the management, the staff. Our mandate, right from chapter 1 of the Constitution, informs clearly what we are supposed to do and to achieve as the Pan South African Language Board. Our mandate is to create conditions for the development, the use, and promotion of all the languages in South Africa. What is also critical about our language, our mandate, as from the Constitution, our mandate is not only focusing on official languages, we are also tasked to be hands-on with South African Sign Language, heritage languages, the Khoi and San languages. So we are doing both official and unofficial languages in terms of Section 6 of the Constitution. As the Pan South African Language Board, we are very clear and cautious of language as an emotive issue, language as a sensitive matter, and in our strategy, we have closely intertwined language to issues of heritage and culture. And it is for that purpose that we are working very, very closely with other Chapter 9 institutions whose mandate is cutting across, like the CRL Commission, like the South African Human Rights Commission. We have shared also platforms with the Office of the Public Protector, as we are doing annually. However, as a board responsible for languages in the country, we are primarily expected to ensure practical multilingualism is taking place in the country. I need to mention herein that through the Constitution of South Africa and also the PENSAP Act as a national legislation, we still, 25 years down the line, experiencing a lot of challenges. We have so good legislations in place, but the whole country is failing to assist us to achieve exactly what the policies are talking about. The biggest question for this webinar is to show the discriminations that are still existing in the country, which is also a challenge for the board. The Constitution talks about the right to be taught in a language of choice, where that is practically possible. I think through this platform, we will need the collaboration and cooperation, and we also need to use this question and this platform to address the challenges that PENSAP is facing with regard to the promotion, the use, and the education when it comes to South African Sign Language, the Khoi and San languages. We have a constitution that is hands-on when it comes to languages, but our strategic partners in government, we are not succeeding. In the whole of South Africa today, not even a single school is teaching Khoi and San languages at the same level as the official languages. We still have challenges of schools that are teaching South African Sign Language because they are not properly resourced. We still have a challenge of perceptions where people think South Africa is only obligated to the official languages. It is for this reason that we want to use this webinar, extend our friendly arm to the Office of the Public Protector, and thank you for this opportunity of creating a platform that will say to South Africa that language is a cross-cutting issue. It's not only for PENSAP to ensure the achievement and the attainment of the linguistic rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. We need the support of the Office of the Public Protector. We need to strengthen collaborations with the CRL Commission, because a lot of rights relating to languages are not yet acceded to. PENSAP has released a report in 2019, the report that the Public Protector quoted from. We have engaged national government departments. We have engaged public entities. Even today, communication officers in government departments are still delivering government messages only and mostly in English. There is still a lot of inequalities when it comes to providing service delivery, giving people access to information from government through their languages. And it is for this reason, Me Florence Masebe, that we need activists like you. We need actors like you who will ensure that messages are delivered to communities through their languages. As the Pan South African Language Board, we have released a report which is showing how we are not succeeding to achieve our mandate through national government departments. Everything is very clear in the report. We are also having a strategy of how to advance nation building, social cohesion, rainbow nation principle through linguistic diversity. We are having programs reaching out to communities, but when it comes to implementation, communities are getting the messages, communities are getting the information, but the tangibles, the practical realities are not forthcoming. In conclusion, as the Pan South African Language Board, we are not happy that Khoi and San languages are not yet taught in schools. We are not happy that even in the country, people think that Khoi and San languages, it's Nama only. We have a family of languages. We have speakers of these languages in the country. We don't have textbooks. We don't have teachers. We don't have resources adequate enough to ensure that this right is attained and is achieved. Whose fault is it? Our mandate is to ensure the development and the promotion. But whose mandate is it to teach these languages? If we can come together with the Department of Basic Education, with the CRL Commission, with the Office of the Public Protector, surely 25 years later, we cannot continue with the genocide of not teaching the Khoi and San communities in their respective languages. It is practically possible that they can be taught through our regional collaborations, cross-border relations. We are working with Botswana when it comes to the San languages. We are working with Namibia when it comes to Nama. We don't have even one university in South Africa that is having or that is training teachers to teach these languages in South Africa. What are we doing as a country when it comes to service delivery through our vernacular languages? Actually, this webinar has got a lot of questions to respond to. We are to be blamed, as Professor Musoma is correctly saying. But what are we doing? We are still far to achieve the goals and the freedoms as enshrined in the Constitution. And as the Pan South African Language Board, we are coming up with strategies. We will engage. We are still engaging. We are still open for advice. And we have structures in place that are tasked on with the development of all the official languages, including sign language, including the Khoi and San languages. 3 weeks back, we were launching a South African charter for sign language with the purpose of getting South Africans be exposed and also learn South African Sign Language. In 2017, we presented to the Constitutional Review Committee the need, the request, the demand to have South African Sign Language and the Khoi and San languages as official languages. It's still a challenge even today. it is still a challenge that through the SABC, there is not even a national radio station for Khoi and San languages. How are these communities expected to be part of the development in the country if they are not taught in their respective mother tongue? We have also observed that as a result of the Khoi and San communities not being taught in their languages, this has contributed to their underdevelopment, the high illiteracy levels in these communities. And who is to blame? Because we have these people as the natural resources and heritage of South Africa. We have people like Oma Katrina Iso, who is a living legend, as recognized even by the president, but we are not giving enough support, enough resources to assist with the preservation and promotion of that particular language. We want to extend our friendly, warm hands to all the stakeholders, including the Department of Basic Education. Let us come on board and let us ensure that vernacular indigenous African languages are also accorded the opportunity, as it is the case with other official languages. I thank you.
Lebogile, Ntate Moremi, for your introductory remarks, which and we've hinted issues around the Khoi and the San, which is a very emotive subject in this country. We hope that sooner or later Parliament will really look at recognizing these languages. As you say, it's a community of languages that must be recognized in terms of the community, the constitution. The Deaf and Sign Language Consultancy, we see you on YouTube. Onkotlule Mere, we see you on YouTube. We are with you. Mr. Mohashwa, we see you. Ms. Mahlangu, we see you. Ms. Masilela, we see you. And all other esteemed guests on this webinar. Ntate Letswalo, the role of language in law and the efforts that are being made to protect the vulnerable, what would be your insights around that as a form of introductory remarks in the 5 minutes that we have? Thank you so much. Mr. Letswalo.
Thank you, facilitator. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. You can proceed.
Thank you very much. I was saying earlier on that you forgot to remind me to render my istakaze. So I venture to say that kinna madromi tadakiebe. Kinna letswalo la matawa magasha. Kinna khomu monaring wa tswapong. Kinna monaring wa mamathola. Kinna molaodi. Kinna mothabini. The language that I speak is not any of the official languages, and it's not even mentioned in the constitution. My language is Kitabini, as much as it's next to Kilobedu. And when I hear issues around the Khoi and the San languages passionately expressed, I also feel like I'm in the same bracket. But however, Ms. Facilitator, we need to stop being pretentious when dealing with issues of language. And I'm actually impressed by the speakers that came before me, the passion with which they've expressed themselves. But we need to start saying things as they are, that this degrading, dislocation and alienation, and in fact, this marginalization of our languages are part of a system of white supremacy, colonization, and apartheid onslaught. So it's not by accident that we are complaining and we are crying on this day about our languages and their roles in various systems or spheres of our existence, because it was a deliberate act throughout our history since colonization and apartheid. So despite this constitutional promise allowing our languages in terms of equity or linguistic rights, the post-1994 arrangement or government has not given sufficient voice or power to our indigenous languages. We continue to be muted despite our being dominant in terms of numbers and political power. So what I want to indicate that in order to address this thing, we require an aggressive, conscious, political, and a truly radical reversal of events, which is what the true liberation and decolonization is about. I'm not talking about the mere tinkering or accommodation of our languages. Our languages need to be given their supreme position. And unfortunately, we're going to be denying this. We can imagine our languages being effaced, being marginalized. But let me give a hypothetical situation here to say that from tomorrow, no English will be spoken in this country. You can imagine the uproar that would follow that kind of announcement. But we have normalized the marginalization of our languages. So it leads me to a point that says that we don't seem to understand what power is. Because power is not only about occupying political office. Power means bringing all the aspects of our existence into the fore, which includes our cultural values, our cultural practices, our languages, our epistemologies, and so on and so on. So our lackadaisical attitude and complacency on matters such as language have led to the effacement and linguicide or the death of our languages. So the fact that today, the 28th of September 2020, we're debating, talking about the disempowerment of indigenous linguistic communities, 26 years into the so-called democracy, I think it's a serious indictment and a cause for shame to us as indigenous people of this country. So as we go on to celebrate heritage, more especially with regard to our culture and so on and so on, I'm worried that we do this whereas our languages and many other aspects that determine our existence as Black people continue to be in the periphery. So the question is, what is there to celebrate if our heritage and pride as Blacks is systemically and institutionally cast aside? So we need to express ourselves on these issues. So the point I want to indicate though is that issues of language and law are very much critical to our existence, or if not survival as a people. Because without a language, you are not different from a non-being. The reason that the erstwhile systems of apartheid and colonialism denied the existence of our languages corresponds with the notion of attitude to us as Black people that we belong to the zone of non-being, no different from animals, because languages determine our subjectivity, that we are subjective beings, not just objects or non-humans. So if you are denied a language, you are denied a basic human right. You are denied your being as a person. So in terms of struggle, the whole issue of struggle from these repressive systems was about reconnecting and centering our being as Africans. So it is too easy for people, whenever they are excited, to shout slogans such as, Maibuye Africa, Maibuye Africa. But what do we mean by that? We mean the reclamation of Africa, the reclamation of our land, our cultural values, and our languages. So that is what constitutes power. So you cannot have only a political office and found wanting or naked in terms of your languages and values and many other things relating to you as a person. So the idea of language as power ties to history and our oracy, whether it's written or not. And it is to this extent that I want to raise a very, very sharp question as to what is the implication of a language not being official. And I want to express my appreciation to Mayor Florence Masebe for raising the issue that our languages, our indigenous languages, have been reduced to vernacular languages. You cannot have a language as official and then at the same time you call it vernacular. And I think it is such contributions that would make ourselves to claim our space in this land of ours with pride, because language goes with pride. But then the other thing that I want to connect with language is, with law, is that when a system exerts itself, be it colonization or whatever, the first point of call is the law or the legal system and language. So they impose their languages on you, actually orchestrate a genocide of your own language, so that through their languages, their epistemologies are imposed on you. So we need to be very, very vigilant when it comes to issues of language and the law. And I'm really happy that my co-panelists have indicated issues of translation in courts and so on and so on. I'm not going to repeat that, but just to indicate how dehumanizing being translated for is. You sound or you look so, helpless and vulnerable because you cannot express yourself in English. Somebody has to translate for you. But the danger of translation, especially in court situations, is that you lack agency in the matter that concerns your fate. You are standing there between prison and freedom. And because of the fact that your language is marginalized, everything is actually dependent on how somebody else is going to translate. And must remember that in a translation situation, the dominant language is the one that sets the pace. And I want to give this example of what I see, for instance, in the Zondo Commission. You see our middle class colleagues, they making themselves so vulnerable and insecure, as if they are liars whenever they're articulating themselves, because you are not confident in the language. But I don't know what makes people not to insist that I want to give my testimony in this Zondo Commission in my own language. And which ties to the point which was raised earlier on by Mama Konyama about the fact that there is the presiding officer, in this case, say Deputy Justice Zondo, who can speak isiZulu. But then we have people struggling to express themselves and without actually taking that power into their own hands to say, I speak Zulu, you can also speak Zulu. So what's wrong with that? But we've been so mentally damaged that we feel that expressing ourselves in English is a sense of intelligence, a sense of arrival, or a sense of style and civilization. And unfortunately, this has serious repercussions in that instance. So I want to make a call that this discussion should not only end right here as a mere talk, where next year we'll be having another talk shop and so on and so on. We should make sure that these discussions translate into reality. The problem with our society is that we're so good in terms of rhetoric and so much wanting in terms of practice. I want to tell you that what the Constitution says, that you have got the right in terms of Section 30 or Section 6, that you have got the right to use language and all that, is fine on paper. But what do we experience in real communities? Our people are not actually having this right that are in the Constitution. What do we need to do now? We have political power. As the majority, paradoxically so, we can use the law, the power of our office to enact the laws that make sure that our languages in real terms become usable, to open the doors for economy. You should be in a position to attend an interview of whatever magnitude in your own language. But there seems to be an unwritten law that you can only attend interviews, more especially professionally, if you can conduct yourself in English. I don't know about the traffic fines that we get on the roads, the so-called tickets or dockets, in which language they are written. But if we have political will as black people, we can actually force institutions to actually embrace our languages. You see when people want to empower themselves through tenders, through BEE and all that, there is a law that insists that you must have satisfied certain requirements. So what stops us to insist that in order for you as a company or as an entity to participate in our economy in a particular way, we need to see how in real terms we have accommodated indigenous languages. We don't seem to have that because we don't have an appetite to remove our languages from the marginalized spaces, from the periphery to the center. So imagine if we have an entrenched law that says public figures, let's say a president or premier, in your addresses, you must speak your language, your mother tongue throughout, not just these greetings of Sanibonani, Dumelang, and then from there you switch to the dominant European language. But the idea that because we know that you are a Umzulu or you are a Mupedi, why don't you speak to the nation or to the province in your own mother tongue? And then the translation service will be there. But we can't go there. It's not nice. It's like we're bursting a bubble. But it's proper. It defies logic why people don't use their mother tongue when they are in certain spaces. The issue of the traditional courts, for instance, I think that's very, very important. I think it ties on to what Professor Musuma indicated about alternative dispute resolution. That is a platform that can be used as a reference point to how we can actually express ourselves in legal situations using our own indigenous languages. because it is the traditional courts, Mahotla, Tinkundla, that have embraced these languages. I cannot even imagine a traditional court being run through the medium of English at all. But what comes out there, we have people with agents, with confidence, who have not been translated for coming out of these court proceedings. However, we are so much into Eurocentric systems of Roman Dutch legal systems, which come with Latin and English, that we don't want to embrace what is our own and what works for our people. We are adopting an elitist approach that says Roman Dutch systems are the ones, and we praise them as the best things to have ever happened to our existence. We ignore our tried and tested systems of governance and systems of, dispute resolution. And I think that is very, very important. I'm going to give, from those who are from a legal background, that when you talk about the court of first instance, even if you would have been through a traditional court system, a ruling has been given, our legal system does not recognize that. So the court of first instance usually starts with the magistrate court, which is a Eurocentric structure at all. So if we're not going to be talking about this, then we're going to keep on having these discussions 26 years, and I can foresee already 50 years of Khobalabala nje about our own existence. But we have got the power to enact laws that would give these languages of ours their rightful places. I mean, a question is, how can a very, 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 very new, or the youngest language ever in the country, Afrikaans, to be so predominant in the systems? Our languages are going to be used only in the regional, like, okay, Sepedi, okay, you can only use Sepedi in Limpopo or sometimes in, Gauteng. But a white English child or person will have the opportunity to use his or her own language throughout the country. So I want to move this thing that is in the constitution that says that, provincial governments or whichever can use languages according to regions. I think it's nonsense, for me, because our languages should be national languages. Because if we've got freedom of movement in this country, it means wherever I go, I must be assured that my language is spoken. Why should I be restricted according to region? So only indigenous languages are going to be regionalized, and foreign languages like your English, no matter how much you love it, will be national. And the reason why the speakers of these languages, particularly English, have got no zeal to even learn our languages is because we follow them, want to be affirmed by those linguistic communities. And it's interesting. Our intelligence and our progress is measured in terms of how much we know about these foreign languages. So you are not going to get English-speaking people learning Sepedi or Chivenda or Xitsonga, but there's no reason for them to do that. And yet, who is in power politically? It's us. But finally, I want to make this important point that many people don't actually want to make when talking about issues of language, is that when you consider the fact that when you marginalize a linguistic community, or when you marginalize a language rather, you are effectively marginalizing and effacing the communities that speak that language. So if you come to realize that our languages were marginalized, deliberately so, since colonial times through to apartheid, and even now post-1994, it means our people have been economically, culturally, politically, and linguistically ostracized. And what does that mean? It means that most of our people would have dropped out of school, for instance, because they couldn't cope using the other language. Others would have been said to be not so intelligent because of the barrier of the language of education or instruction. So when we talk about reparations, we mustn't talk in terms of only the fiscal things like, okay, the land and all that. What about the onslaught, the disadvantage that would have been visited to our people by the linguicide, by the killing of their language in the economic and social space? So I would like to suggest that we must start looking at how we can compensate rather for this kind of loss by having institutions such as the public protector and many other government institutions. That says that there should be some way in which whoever should be contributing to a fund that would help in terms of research and development of our languages. And I want to make this point that our languages were marginalized when we didn't have this fourth industrial revolution and all that, because they were falsely said that they are not scientific enough, they're not established, developed for research and science and all that. And I think that is a fallacy, a very, very, very big fallacy. And I want to give a warning that when going towards the fourth industrial revolution initiatives, we must make sure, thank you, that our languages are not left behind in this fourth industrial revolution train. I will pause here and wait for contributions in the discussions. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. David Letsoalo, for your input into this discussion. We have gone beyond the set time of finishing this debate. We were supposed to finish it at 12 o'clock midday. But really, I see that these issues are really passionate issues that our esteemed panelists want to deal with and deliver on today in terms of the insights that they have. We would extend the session for a further 15 minutes to an extent that we intend to close at about 12:30 with the sessions, and we will be asking each of our panelists 1 or 2 questions for them to quickly wrap up in terms of their inputs. Mr. Semelan, are you back now?
Yes, Program Director, I'm back. I'm not too sure if I'm audible now. Am I audible?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Mhlambe angiqale ngokuthi boSimelane bangemaswati. Thina singabo matabankosi basomhlolo, bosomhlolo eSwatini. Ngizohamba ngigcine lapho because of in the interest of time. Maybe let me also make a special mention to Advocate Kgalema and my fellow panelists, and to also thank the organizers for inviting basic education to make input in the topic under discussion. Well, this is a very emotive topic, and the issue of language is not only emotive, but it is also political. So there are many considerations that need to be borne in mind when we talk about the issue of language. But to go straight to the brief and the framework that we were given as basic education to guide our input, I'll start by articulating some of the challenges that we have come to identify around the issue of language. the main one, which other panelists have already touched on, is the fact that our indigenous African languages have been neglected and marginalized. And this has resulted in them being progressively underdeveloped and, of course, even under-resourced. With the result that even though in some of our policies, for instance, our language and education policy recognizes the use of all official languages. But in the main, within basic education, we have found that we have had the dominance of English and Afrikaans as languages for teaching and learning at the expense of our indigenous African languages. Whereas the African languages are actually used by the majority of learners in the sector. And that's a serious challenge in that regard, which is why we have also seen that even universities who train teachers, official teachers, when a teacher or a prospective teacher wants to specialize or major in an African language, the teacher will be lectured in English, in the medium of English, for them to teach an African language once they begin their practice. And that is a problem because it means when they practice their profession, there will be a process of translating in terms of methodologies and approaches from an English language to an African language. This is why it has been found, some studies have found that our foundation phase teachers, for instance, those who are expected to teach every subject in the home language of their learners are battling to even teach other subjects in the home language of the learners. They even battle to teach learners how to read in African languages because they don't have the methodologies that are appropriate to teach a specific African language. Secondly, our South African Schools Act actually mandates school governing bodies to determine the language of learning and teaching or the language of instruction to be used at a school. Now, the challenge in that regard with those powers given to school governing bodies is that the powers have in some communities, for instance, in heterogeneous school communities, those powers have been misused. To an extent that you would find that in terms of enrollment figures, you would have in a particular former model C school, maybe an enrollment of up to 90% of Black African learners, but they would be taught through the medium of English or Afrikaans because the school governing body will make that determination. And those are huge challenges which eventually impact on how our Black African learners are actually performing in their learning process. I can cite many examples. For instance, when it comes to the education of learners who are deaf, over a number of years, up until 2015, when South African Sign Language was introduced in basic education as a language of teaching and learning and as a home language to be learned particularly by deaf learners who proceed up to grade 12, and when they pass their grade 12, they would only be writing one language at grade 12 level. And for that reason, they would reach a dead end after grade 12. You wouldn't have them proceeding to in higher education institutions. But this has since been mediated because South African Sign Language is now offered as one of the official languages in basic education. We are seeing that, for instance, as I mentioned, even in township schools, for instance, in the Gauteng province, the classrooms are mixed in terms of languages. So it usually So some language speakers will be marginalized in the process. But coming to what we have done as basic education to try and mitigate some of these challenges that we've highlighted, we have embarked on an incremental introduction of African languages, targeting schools where an African language has never been taught. And we have been making progress in this regard. And this is for purposes of social cohesion, if you wish. Secondly, we have a policy that suggests that learners from grade R to grade 3 need to be taught in their home language, and then only switch maybe from grade 4. But again, that has posed another challenge, which is why in international tests, it has been found, for instance, that most South African learners, about 76% of South African learners who participate in these international tests, which is called PALS, for instance, which is one of those, have been found not to be able to read and read with meaning, not understanding what they read. And those are learners in grade 4 because they are tested in a language which is not predominantly their home language. So we've introduced the home languages at foundation phase, and also maybe English at first additional language from grade 1, so that our learners begin to be introduced in the language that will be mainly the language for learning and teaching from grade 4 going forward. We have also put together, we are in the process of introducing what we call the mother tongue-based multilingual education in the sector. We have started the process. It's a long way to go. And it must be understood that this has got nothing to do with people who studied linguistics and all of that. It's a transformation, it's a revolution that we are bringing about in the sector to make sure that our indigenous African languages are utilized both for purposes of learning and teaching, as well as a language for assessment. As the Honourable Member who is in the panel mentioned, that in the Eastern Cape, which is the province that has already piloted the utilization of African languages beyond grade 3 in the country, even grade 12 in this preliminary exam are writing their question papers or exam papers in isiXhosa and Sesotho, because those are the African languages that have found utilization beyond grade 3 in particular. I've indicated that we've already introduced the South African Sign Language. We are in a process of developing material and putting together a language framework which is going to bring about parity of esteem across all official languages. In the process, we are also introducing Khoi, San, as well as Kiswahili as one of the African languages. Maybe getting to what the Office of the Public Protector can assist the department with. I think as Mr. Noxolo, if I'm not mistaken, has indicated that actually, I think it's Mr. right now. Mr. Moremo, actually from Pan South, did mention that where the Public Protector's Office could come in and assist across government. And then also in the case of basic education, it is to assist in protecting the linguistic rights of our Black African communities, in particular to make sure that their languages are lifted to the level of English and Afrikaans, and that we can get this transformation happening and bringing to par the utilization of African languages in particular, and also protecting our communities from having their languages diminishing and dying slowly. So I would think our inputs would go as far as that, but also just finally to thank the panelists for all the invaluable contributions that they have made. We have been making notes frantically, making sure that we can build on all these strategies and ideas that have been brought forward in this panel discussion. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Semelan. We would also request that you also send through your written inputs because we had a challenge at the point in terms of the audio. But thank you so much for providing this valuable input in terms of the work that the Department of Education is doing. I wish to direct a question because of lack of time to Advocate Mkhwebane in terms of the work that we do as a public protector. How does our office deal with the issues of language? In particular, the issues around rendering of our services as an office. Thank you, Advocate.
Thank you, Program Director. Yes, we've been struggling to hear Mr. Semelan, but then in short, hence we have this webinar. We'll request each and every panelist and even those who are watching to send or even suggest where can we intervene as an institution. I've indicated that we are currently investigating a complaint by the students at the University of Stellenbosch in Northwest, Potchefstroom actually, where they complained about the issue of using Afrikaans in all their teaching and learning. We also have a complaint we are investigating from the Shu and Kwe community in Kimberley, which we will work very closely with PENSALP and CRL on that particular matter. There is a complaint we've received where a person was not assisted or the way they were advised at CCMA and they had to take a wrong decision. So the public protector is there to intervene, and I think the DPP in closing will also indicate where are the areas which we are identifying, which we will investigate going forward. And we will use this webinar to come up with systemic investigation. So I think issues which were raised by Ms. Masebe, issues raised by PENSAP, and issues raised by Mr. Litsualo, those are the issues we can cooperate on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate Mkhwebane. Ms. Masebe, you have indicated the issues around the role of the SABC in terms of the lack of inclusion of other languages, and where we see that it's a by the way issue because they are recognized by the Constitution, but the slots that are given actually not enough. Do you think that the public protector has actually a role to play in this regard?
Absolutely. I think it is worth taking a look into why is it that certain languages are only afforded space on the radio platform and the television platform then gets reserved only for a minimum group of languages. So you are likely to experience a lot of Nguni languages on television. You will experience a lot of Sesotho, Setswana, Sepedi, but the rest of the languages fall away. There are people who do not know that Sitokwa is Sepedi. There are people who do not know that Kilobedu that is spoken in Hamujaji is not Sepedi. There are people who do not understand that when I speak Chivenda, a Tsonga speaking person doesn't know what I'm saying. They lump languages together. You know, people for the longest time assumed that a person who speaks Sindebele doesn't need to be catered for because they understand isiZulu. These things need to change because television is a very powerful medium. So if we don't get it right on television, it then goes into all the other little things that we're creating. The work that our children are exposed to on YouTube, the things that we then put into our apps that we say are here to make life easier, all of them still do not factor in language. When you take away a person's right to be educated, informed, and entertained in their mother tongue, you are in fact muting their voice and saying that they only matter as a secondary consideration. So yes, language use and language equity within the broadcasting space needs a very serious look from the Office of the Public Protector.
Thank you so much. Dr. Moremi, in terms of your enforcement mechanisms, are you seeing any results of these matters being handled at the level of the
Thank you, Chairperson and the panel. Honestly speaking, the board will need to work closely with the Office of the Public Protector, the South African Human Rights Commission, and the CRL Commission on matters that we are picking up as pencil in terms of linguistic violations that can be taken through the equality courts, because our act that empowers our mandate is very silent on enforcement. So we will definitely need that collaboration with the CRL Commission and the Public Protector. We are working very closely with the CRL Commission, but there are areas that we strongly feel for enforcement purposes, we will need the muscles and the powers vested in the Office of the Public Protector. Just to conclude in 1 minute, we have proved as a Pan South African Language Board that the Kwe and San communities in Platfontein are willing. They have been knocking. They want to be taught in mother tongue. But up until today, they are not taught their language in that school. And there are practical strategies and mechanisms that if we all clean up together, it will be possible that they can be taught. But if the powers that be are not opening up such doors, that's where we will need enforcement in terms of the powers vested in the Office of the Public Protector and the CRL Commission. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honourable Kosikazi Konyama, do you think that Parliament still has a role to play on this matter?
The Parliament, I don't want to point to the Parliament. The Parliament has made it possible in terms of the Constitution that every culture and every language has to be respected. Now, the onus is with the society and the people of South Africa, but I want to put an emphasis on the role of the public protector in as far as addressing especially these issues. I've mentioned the aspect of the language usage in our courts. And truth being told, those who have the people in rural communities are the worst people that are experiencing these challenges. So I've made an enactment to the Department of Sports, Arts and Recreation, Arts and Culture, but in terms of addressing the challenge, because with them, I think the role is limited, but the answer to the challenges that the rural communities are having, I want to believe that it lies at some point or right now as we are starting, as we are engaging in this dialogue with the public protector in assisting the people of South Africa in ensuring that the language usage in their courts is the one that they understand, is the one that they use. Just in closing, sorry, the chair, that program director, that I'm taking a bit of your time, but it's going to be 1 minute. The quote that I wanted to make earlier on was by Lord Macaulay, who addressed the British Parliament on the 2nd of February in 1835. It reads as follows: I have traveled across the length and breadth of Africa. I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief, such wealth. I have seen in this country such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think that we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture. For if Africans think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater, that their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. We are indeed a truly dominated nation, as Professor Musongo has mentioned, but our plea is with the public protector now to come up with ways and means as to how to address this serious imbalance in as far as language is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that input, Mr. Letsoalo. The role of the royal councils and government. Do you think there can still be an opportunity for us to deal with these issues confronting us?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it's a given. The fact that we have royal councils who are supposed to be the custodians of our cultures as indigenous communities, and also and automatically custodians of our languages. It goes without saying that that's a no-brainer. But if we have our point of reference from the Eurocentric point of view, then that would become a debate. In fact, we should have started right there to say that the traditional authorities or royal councils should be given the necessary power, not just a favor, then the power, real power to engage on these matters. And just in conclusion, I just want to appreciate the initiative by the Public Protector's Office to have come up with this webinar, and also involving other institutions like the CRL Commission. Because I was going to propose, as indicated right here, that I think a cluster approach in terms of which there is an intersection of intervention. In other ways, an interdisciplinary approach to involve the Public Protector's Office, the CRL Commission, the Human Rights Commission, as well as PENSAB, will actually go a long way towards addressing these issues. And I want to re-emphasize the role that royal councils and traditional courts should play in this area. For the colleague from PENSAB, I spoke to people from Bloemfontein, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, because we've been doing work with them. Your contribution there is highly acknowledged, and the language committees that we have formed there, it's highly acknowledged. Indeed, it is true that the communities there do not have their languages taught in the schools. They have Afrikaans as their first language, which is not, and then English as their second language, which is not. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think this question is directed to the CRL from Nkosi Nomandla, who says a lot of discussion have taken place as indicated by the presenters and I fully agree with them. What is not clear from my side as to who is responsible for the implementation, which is always the case when the resolutions are taken, but there's no implementation. CRL?
Thank you so much. The question is general because there are quest for implementation everywhere. But I wanted to take this point from the point of view of collaboration. And I think we need a strategy for policy implementation, because what remains is that we have policy, we have the constitution. It is at the level of implementation. And I think from the 3 or 4 institutions, human rights, public protector, PENSALP, and ourselves, is to have an analysis of implementation gaps. Where do these challenges lie? And of course, also an analysis of issues requiring collaboration. I think Elizondo talks about cluster collaboration. In terms of the FISD, which is the Forum of Institutions Supporting Democracy, the principle of collaboration has been accepted for some time now. I think it's important for us to pool our resources, both intellectual and otherwise, to work together to drive these processes of our languages, not only being given the space of equity or equitable use, but to become the backbone of development, transformation, and economic direction of a country. Complete participation, because if that happens, obviously the languages will gain traction in terms of use at every end in our society. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much for that input. And before I invite the Deputy Public Protector, Advocate Kgalema, I see Nkosi Nomandla says awareness campaigns on the work of the Public Protector's Office, joint efforts by the sectors represented in this webinar is important. So these are comments from Nkosi Nomandla. I also, from my side, also wish to appreciate the inputs and the insights by our esteemed panelists who have shared with us their views on this important subject of the role of the public protector on issues affecting vernacular languages, including the Khoi and San languages in South Africa, to entrench good governance. And I hope all of us have learned a lot and actions that must be taken going forward, including because Honourable Konyama did indicate I think this presents an opportunity for us to deal and confront with these issues to ensure that we don't have linguicide going forward. I will now invite the Deputy Public Protector, Advocate Kgalema, to provide us with a summary of the discussions as well as to close this webinar. Over to you, Advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Good afternoon to our esteemed panelists, participants, the Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa. Igama lam ndingukholeka ndintombi yakwaGgalema emaqhinebeni kohala koqhuqhuqhu. Ndizalwa yintombi yakwaXhamela yakwamgcina. Ndingumzukulwana wasemaqathini odikela ononi. I remain highly indebted to my forebears for my existence. This afternoon, my task really is to do the summary way forward and the closure of this program. I would really like to thank the Public Protector, Mamu Mkhwebane, Umdlangwe, for giving me this opportunity and the power really to bring out what has been part of these discussions and what it is that we as Public Protector South Africa are going to take forward in this regard. Firstly, allow me to quote from the review commissioned by the Foundation for Human Rights in South Africa from October to November 2006, which is known as the Kwasi-Kwapra paper, where it says, I quote, "Beyond the issue of rights, it is important to note that language and literacy are very crucial for societal development. A society develops into modernity when its citizens are literate in the languages of the masses. In other words, it is not possible to reach modernity if the language or languages of literacy and education are only within the intellectual ambit of small minority," I unquote. This is the key to service delivery, Public Protector. We really cannot reach democracy, and we cannot say that democracy is at play if services are not delivered in a language that the masses of South Africa speak and understand. I would like to take a connotation from a Twitter that was tweeted by Ms. Masebe in the past weeks, where the notion is that if I do not write in a language that you understand, it means that my message is not for you. And I think what we have discussed and what has come out strongly today from all the panelists is that language can either be a barrier or it can be an advancement of our democracy, and the core to that, service delivery and ensuring good governance. If the people who receive the service do not understand the service and what the service is about, they are unable to understand how to respond. What has come out very strongly is the issue of our medium of communication as a country, the national broadcaster, the SABC itself, that doesn't recognize the majority language in South Africa, where it is only given time slots here and there. We've seen that in play in the messaging around the pandemic that we are going through as a country. And we see the reaction on the ground that indeed the majority of the people of South Africa did not understand the messaging around the pandemic. In majority, the messaging has been in English, and here and there, it has been in our indigenous languages, which means that the majority of the people of our country who are illiterate, who are indigenous people, who are rural and poor people of South Africa, are the people who do not understand what this pandemic is about. It's people who do not understand how they must protect themselves during this period of pandemic, because the messaging from government has not been clear. We've heard even the president, the ministers, and even in the provinces, the health ABCs, when they speak, in majority, they were speaking in English. Even in the provinces that we expect that indigenous language must be to the front, like the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and others, the majority of times leadership has been speaking in the English language, meaning that indeed they were not speaking to the indigenous people of South Africa. They were not speaking to the majority of the people of South Africa. Therefore, the reaction as to how people responded to how they need to respond to the virus has really been in the opposite in these majority areas. Let me also take around the issue of policy implementation. Indeed, we have an exquisite constitution, our laws, our policies. However, it comes to the implementation of those policies, which Public Protector, that is the core of our mandate, to ensure that services are being delivered to the people in line with the policies and the legislations that government puts in place. Now, if people are unable to understand, they cannot hear what is being said and what is intended for them, how do they receive that and how do they respond to that? And what comes to the core is, what is the impact of this in terms of the confidence of the people? how are people able to approach government and say, this is lacking in my community, this is what we want as a community, if the very same public servants do not speak their language or do not want to speak their language? Therefore, it reduces one's ability to be able to fight for their rights and fight for what they are supposed to be served with. I mean, popularly, we would know that, especially in the retail sectors and even in the government sector, the most people who complain the most and whose needs are being met is the minority white people. And the reason for that is because communication is in their language. They are confident and they are articulate in raising their needs. Whereas the majority of the people of South Africa, the Black people, are not confident enough because it is not their language in which majority of services and communication thereof is being communicated. Therefore, they cannot articulately put forward their needs. And hence we see so much of underdevelopment in our rural areas and in our township areas because access to government services is not for all. It is for all in paper, but for as long as it is not been communicated in that language, it is not for all. One of the speakers also spoke here about the State of the Nation address, the State of the Provinces address, that it is in English. Who is it intended to? We go back to the quote of Ms. Masebe that if I do not write or I do not speak in a language that you understand, it means that it is not for you. So we can safely say that service delivery in this country, in the vast majority, it is not for the majority of the people of South Africa. So that is really what is coming out very strongly here. But what is also coming out is that we should be worried about the future. The language, the indigenous languages, the official languages of our country are becoming invisible. The Khoisan already, we can see, and part of his language, I am told that there's only 3 elderly women left who can speak the language and who are actually worried that they are going to pass on without leaving a legacy of their language, which means that even their culture and heritage would not be able to be celebrated by future generations. Now, what this means that when storytelling of our children is no longer there, our media platforms mostly does their programs in English. At home, we speak English to them because the teachers encourage that when you get home, you must speak English so that you can better understand your syllabus, so that you can pass. What does it mean for the majority of the official languages in our country? It means that generations to come will not even know who they are. They would not know Babango Mabani, which also means that they would even marry each other because we might not share the same surnames because every surname is a name of a descendant. But isiduko helps you to realize your roots. But it means that our future generations will not be able to know that. And Public Protector, what is also coming out clearly is that Public Protector South Africa has got a huge role to play. And what makes the powers of the Public Protector even stronger is that our remedial actions are binding unless reviewed by a court of law. Therefore, we need to use that power. We call upon the public. I see that we've got participants even from Twitter, even from YouTube, who are also raising the issue of language, you know, as really being a barrier on issues of service delivery, but most importantly, the issue of economic domination. The reason why English is dominating is because it is those who control the means of production in our country. Therefore, they control the means of service delivery. So we see how vastly this comes across, and this comes across very clearly from our participants in our other platforms, and they call upon the Public Protector to really take action and assist in this regard. And What is interesting is that Public Protector is also the chair of the FISD, and it has come across from our partner in the FISD that the Public Protector really needs to assist in this regard. So at least we'll be able to also push the agenda in respect of that angle. Now, when it comes to our way forward, we are committing to hold a systemic investigation, which is in line of our mandate. We can't do own initiative investigations. Now, on each of these webinars, we are taking along things that really are a hindrance when it comes to service delivery, because part of our mandate is to ensure that government is accountable, it is transparent, and it delivers its services in a fair manner, which means that its services must be accessible to all. So where services are not accessible to all, and which is in this regard, we then have the discretion to intervene. We are then committing that we will do a systemic investigation looking into SABC and ICASA on how they are making their services accessible to all as it is supposed to be, but also looking into the Department of Justice, how the courts are accessible to all. Our constitution calls upon that all are equal before the law. And if the courts really are not making the judicial system accessible to all by the barrier of language, then are we really serving the people in the manner that we should be serving them? The issue of the courts is a very serious one, Public Protector. I actually have an incident when I just started prosecuting in the early 2000s, where witnesses had gone to request for a form for witness fees. The control prosecutor was a white lady. The witnesses were Tsonga speaking. They couldn't communicate. And this white lady started shouting at them and said, go and get the interpreter because I cannot hear you, I cannot understand you. That is abuse of power. That is maladministration to the core. And those are the things that we should more, and through this systemic investigation, be able to uproot and ensure that our people do not suffer in that manner when approaching our courts of law, which is really the core, especially for the poor people accessing maintenance and domestic violence protection orders. How do they access those kind of services if the languages that are being spoken in those platforms are really not the languages that they speak? Indeed, we will endeavor by all means to collaborate with the CRL together with PENSEL and civil society to ensure that we bring government to account, we bring government to deliver equitable services to all so that people can be liberated. When services are not being delivered to you, when you are not being spoken to in a language that you speak the most, how can you say you are free? 26 later into democracy, still there are issues around languages. We really appreciate and welcome the progress around the sign language. And we hope that the other languages that have been mentioned here will also find resonance as our democracy grows older. I would then like to take this opportunity to really thank the panelists today for sharing with us their experience. We are really empowered. It's it's power to the core. Ms. Masebe, we really thank you. Kaladziwanga, Wanyamutenga, Ndolebuwa. We thank you, Honourable Konyama, Kesa Zulu, Siabulela Mama Wam. Professor Musana, Mukoni, Ralebucha Ntate Warona, for your wisdom provided. Dr. Semelan Mbembe, Siabulela, Siabonga. Muremi, Mulolong, we really hope that you will fight even harder to ensure that your language finds resonance in this democratic South Africa. Tatuletswalo, Monareng, Ralebuch. It's actually Monareng who mentioned the issue of his language. My apologies for that confusion. We really hope that your language will find resonance amongst us. Most of all, I would also like to thank our participants on the webinar, from Twitter, from YouTube, and other media platforms for your participation and also for your contributions to ensure that we build a better South Africa for all. To the team that has put together this webinar, led by the Chief Operations Officer, who did not tell us about his claims and PP. We must have a special session for him to really properly introduce himself before us. Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Ntoriseg Mutsitsi, the Executive Manager for CSM, you've outdone yourself, my sister. To you and your team, keep it up. From Communications, Mr. Opasihale, thank you very much, my brother. Without you, we wouldn't have this platform. Last and not least, to the Public Protector of the Republic of South Africa, thank you so much, my sister. Your leadership is acknowledged. Your vision to us is really not just a vision to Public Protector South Africa, but it is a vision to the South Africans to realizing that we reach the grassroots of our countries. And what is mostly exciting about Public Protector South Africa, fellow colleagues, and why I confidently make this commitment on our part is that Public Protector South Africa is led by women. Thina ke sithetha ukwenza, senza kwenzeke. Thank you so much. And to those wearing their traditional attires, you really look beautiful. Nesasekile ngomfu. From my side and the Office of the Public Protector, thank you very much.
Thank you everyone, goodbye.
Thank you, PP. Thanks to everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, colleagues, for a lovely day.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.